So tell me about how you got involved in this process.
Essentially, I started, looking around for different types of access control mechanisms so I could easily get into my home and office, a few years back. And I was looking at, biometrics, fingerprint scanning, iris scanning, something that would allow me to gain access to these important places that I'm always, carrying keys around for without actually having to carry around the keys because, I'm kind of the guy that forgets them or, leaves them laying around or whatever. So I looked at these other technologies, and they're just too big and too bulky, too difficult and expensive to get implemented. So I looked at RFID, which is being used all over the place for access, building access. People are real familiar with the key cards, that kind of thing. But I didn't really give it too much thought because it required a key card. You had to carry it around, and I was trying to avoid that. So I actually went ahead and saw that the chips that cats and dogs were getting, and I said, well, there's RFID technology that could easily be used, for this type of scenario. So I looked around and found some chips that weren't necessarily used for pets, but they were more kind of an open, standard chip that's used in a lot of OEM reader hardware, and decided to get a couple of those and played around with them and then got them implanted.
Now, Amal, the specific type of microchip we're talking about tonight is not Verichip. In fact, isn't it a different type? And you, let's see, a friend did it for you, right?
Yeah, the one in my left hand is an EM4102, which basically means it's a 10-digit read-only unique identifier.
Mm-hmm.
And that was put in by a surgeon who's a client of mine, and she just made a quick scalpel cut and put it on the skin and a Band-Aid, and it was done. My right hand actually has a slightly smaller chip. It's a Philips HiTag, and it supports crypto security features and a little bit of read-write memory, so I can store a little bit of data on it. And that was implanted by a family doctor using the same pet injector kits that are used on pets, the little needle.
Now, your girlfriend, Jenny, she also has undergone a similar process?
She was kind of put off by it a little bit, and but she watched me go through the process of getting it done, then go through the whole process of writing the book RFID Toys, and actually implementing these projects kind of in my daily life. So computer logon, front door access, car door access, that kind of stuff. So she saw that there wasn't really any health risks involved, and it was working rather well. So in December she said, well, maybe I'm kind of interested in that. So we just called up the same family doctor that did my right hand, and he said, sure, bring her over, and within 30 seconds it was a done deal.
Let's go back to your book, RFID Toys. You can also go to his website, rfidtoys.net, to get more information on that. How much stuff can we do with these chips, Amal?
Well, the book doesn't really cover implant chips necessarily, but it just covers different types of RFID technologies. The chips themselves are kind of limited in what they can do because they have a limited read range of only about 2 inches. So the projects in the book cover, low frequency, which are, chips like these implantable ones that have a very short range. But it also covers high frequency, which has a range, somewhat longer, maybe a few feet, and some, ultra high frequency that has lots of, maybe 100 feet or so. An active RFID, which uses an actual battery in the tag to extend the range even further. So it covers, everything from, home access, vehicle access, computer login, shows you how to modify certain things, like take an electronic safe and add RFID access control to it. It covers different things like object locators. So like if you have a business and with lots of different office rooms and buildings, and you have shared equipment like an overhead projector, let's say, and you want to know where is that overhead projector? I need it for my meeting. If you have a tag on that projector, you can immediately find out, oh, it's in room B405, and go get it.
So the ultimate world of convenience, in other words. Do you see this as some sort of evolution in humanity?
I don't see it as really an evolution of humanity. I mean, the implant procedure is really kind of benign. It's not anything like a pacemaker or a cochlear implant or something that actually does interface with your body to help improve your standard of living. It's just basically the skin is kind of acting as a little pocket to hold on to this glass encased chip. So as far as the body's concerned, it's inert. It doesn't really realize that it's there. It just heals around it, and it's just kind of holding it. It would be no different than somehow, duct taping one of these access cards to yourself, and carrying it around at all times. So the difference is it's just slightly under the skin. So as far as like an evolutionary stage or something like that.
So how popular do you think that RFID and or the implantable microchip is going to be in, say, the next 10 years?
I think the next 10 years holds a lot of interesting things in implant technology in general. As far as RFID implant technology, I think it's kind of it has a limited lifespan because it does require, the whole idea for RFID is to identify. Like we want to know, who is this or what does this tag represent? But the problem is, just like stickers on stuff at the store, you can swap around, these RFID labels, or you can, basically interfere with these, RFID chips, or, essentially the issue is, when it comes to people and implants, the issue is that you have to actually have a chip implanted, which is kind of for a lot of people that's at least to say it's an inconvenience, but it's difficult to do. So I think in the future, particularly 10 years from now, I think biometric identification for people anyway is going to be a huge industry. So being able to tell someone's identity based on their features, like their facial features or even their chemical scent. A lot of these types of biometric devices are being developed and are actually used in places like the UK today. They have systems integrated with all the city cameras that keep watch over intersections and transit, tube transit, that kind of thing. They're putting all this data into a computer, and they're saying, we want to know where this particular guy has been, what blocks, what intersections, what tube stations, where has this person been? And the computer is able to match that up and give a profile of this person. So that person doesn't need an implant to be able to do that, and I think that's where the technology for identifying people is really going to go in the next 10 years.
That little story you told me about England, we have another one later on tonight about the eye scans that are coming to all the airports there, just like here.
What, in the context of what we're talking about, which is abuse of power, and the thing is, it's not if you have nothing to fear or hide, it's the fact that, when you implement these types of systems, abuse of those systems becomes trivial. Case in point, I had a friend who, basically was involved in a court case, and that court case was against the government in certain forms, and so to help this guy's case, they had a bunch of people that had come out and said, we'll testify for this person, to help them out. And then they all flew back to their jobs, and whatever. And then the next week, they were going to fly back out to the court case to actually be present to testify. And all these people, about 20 of them, suddenly found themselves on the no-fly list. And if that isn't abuse of power, I don't know what is.
Okay. So as I gather from you and talking with you tonight and reading a little bit on your blog and website, you don't have any privacy concerns at all? Or just they're not very significant?
I would say I have privacy concerns when it comes to RFID with certain types, but one of the biggest misconceptions about RFID is that RFID is just one thing and one technology, but it's actually a broad range and a huge range of different technologies and different capabilities. So my privacy concerns for the implant that I have are none. I don't really have any concerns at all about that. I do have privacy concerns when you start talking about other types of RFID, particularly ones with longer read ranges, more standardized ones, and in particular, when it comes to things like products, clothing, that kind of thing, where manufacturers and retailers will have kind of an infrastructure put together to read these tags as you go from store to store and place to place. I mean, there's nobody who's going to spend billions of dollars to put together an infrastructure to track me around with my particular type of implant. It just isn't going to happen. But when you have something more standardized like clothing, then privacy concerns do become a reality.
Amal, some of the most amazing, and you know this as well as I do, amazing technological breakthroughs are happening right now every single year. There's another new toy out. There's another form of identification that's, at this airport or that airport in this war and tear. How far do you think that they ought to push this while we're in a war on terror as far as the biometrics you spoke of, the face scanning, the eye scanning, the retina scanning, and so on and so forth? Do you think there's a limit?
I think there is a limit, and I think that limit's actually been crossed a long time ago. But yeah, there's definitely a line where the amount of additional safety you're going to, or the perceived amount of security that you're going to gain from these invasive technologies the invasion of privacy and the abuse of power far outweigh whatever insignificant gains in security you're going to get. I mean, we're supposed to be a free society, but you're not if you have to submit to all this intense government scrutiny on where you go, what you do, and everything. I mean, if the government was completely benign and nothing but godlike, then it wouldn't be an issue. But we all know that it's run by people and people that are don't know what's going on. And I think as far as like the Big Brother aspect goes, to refer back to the no-fly list abuse of power thing, I don't think it was like quote unquote the government that said we're going to target these people just because we don't want them to testify. I think it was abuse of power in a more different way, which is somebody at the trial knew somebody else and said, hey, I know if I call this guy and I say, hey, here's a list of people that I think are, whatever. The other person's not going to know what the context is. They're just going to say, okay, well, we'll check it out. And just to be safe, we'll put them on this no-fly zone, list. So it's not like everybody's conspiring to abuse this power. It's just people are ignorant about, how it could be abused and it happens. So regardless if these people on this no-fly list actually did something about it, the damage is done. So, I think in reality, all these measures and extra security are causing more damage to our freedoms as Americans than it's doing us any good.
I think I understand where you're coming from to some extent. So overall, it seems like you do have a few privacy concerns, but none that are would be considered liberal hysteria, for example, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you limit the context just to the chips that I have and whatnot, then I don't have many concerns. But as you start to expand the technology and see how it's being used, there are definite concerns.
So how many different things do you do exactly with this chip? Is it your car that you go into and your house as well?
Yeah, I have just three basic things. The three most used things that I normally need keys for, which are house, car, and computer login.
Computer login. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll ever be implemented at some point to be able to pay to have the option at a supermarket by this form or by, say, the thumbprint?
I think that yeah. I mean, it'll probably be a reality at some time. I know even credit card companies are developing RFID-enabled credit cards so that you don't have to take them out of your wallet. You just put it up against the reader. But and Verichip Corporation, they're pushing their implantable chip for payment solution as well. But I think I think it's for payment and things like that. It'll probably be pretty big. I don't know about actual implantation, but I know that maybe a pay card or a credit card with RFID enabled features will probably be a reality fairly soon.
She's redefining embedded journalist. She just had an RFID embedded in her arm. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Hi.
It's good to have you with us. Can you explain what you did?
Sure. So I had been researching an article for Wired about security issues in RFIDs, and I read some publicity materials from Verichip in which the company claimed that its chip couldn't be counterfeited, and so it was the perfect anti-theft key because the implication was that no one could steal your keys without actually cutting off your arm, although they didn't actually say that in the advertising materials. And so that sounded very curious to me because I hadn't heard of any RFIDs that were completely secure like that, so I decided to find out if it was true. So a very nice doctor at UCLA agreed to implant me with one of them, and very quick operation. And then I visited with an RFID expert named Jonathan Westhuse, who has a little iPod-sized device that he made himself. It's a quite cheap homemade thing, and it's designed to clone RFID chips, which means make a duplicate copy of them, basically. And in about 10 minutes, we sat down in a restaurant in a crowded place, and he was able to duplicate the signal from my RFID, which meant that if my RFID had been used to open vaults or locks, he would have been able to duplicate that signal simply by basically bumping into me with his device and then going ahead and using what he picked up from it to open up a door.
Can you back up a minute, Annalie? Describe the operation.
The getting the implant, you mean?
Yes.
So basically, the RFID is quite small. It's just a microchip attached to a very tiny antenna, and it's embedded in doped glass. It's a surgical glass that's safe. It's just like the tags that you put into your pet or into your cow if you're a farmer. And they take a needle, a hollow needle, and basically just shoot the chip under your skin.
Do you still have this implant?
I do, yes. Unfortunately, as it turns out, they're somewhat difficult to remove because they're so small that although it's easy to put them in, the surgeon explained to me that you kind of have to dig around a little bit to find it, to remove it. So far, yeah, I have kept it in.
Do you set off any alarms with it?
No, you don't. Actually, the read range on these, the range that you need to be quite close to them to read them. So you really have to be within a couple of
Can you
centimeters.
guys give a message
so
for me?
It isn't going to set off anything particularly.